Good morning, everyone, and welcome to your Week 5 Monday Morning Breakfast Bite. As we are moving quickly along, this week you have your individual term project due, and I just want to touch base with you about that because it is an important part of your grade. It is significantly weighted, so I want to make sure everybody's on the same page. Now, every semester I say this, and however many people want to take me up on it is up to you as a student, but I am willing to take a look at your individual term project rough draft if you can email it to me by Friday of this week. And I'm not going to grade it for you, but I am going to tell you whether you're heading in the right direction or not. One thing I want you to be very on point about is with this case, you're not looking at the procedural stuff. And I'm going to talk about it in a minute. Now, last semester I had a different case for BUL3130 students to analyze. This time I have the Kozeny case, which is a case that I've used in the past, but I really like it because it gives all of you a flair for a little bit of international law, because what you're doing is you're looking at a company that was trying to create a business in another country and the pitfalls of doing so. Because when you do business in another country, you actually have to not only be aware of the host country's laws, but you have to be aware of your own country, your home country's laws. So this had to do with individuals setting up a business in another country, but they were citizens of the United States. And if you violate our laws, then you're going to be held accountable for them. And so that's what this is about. Now, when you look at this case, this is not a research project. You're confined to this case and just this case. You cannot go outside the parameters of this case. So you're analyzing it from only reading the material that is in the case itself. So when you're reading that material, you're focusing only on the case. You're not going to go Google information outside of the case. But also what I want you to think about is you're looking at what we call the substantive material, which is the real issue in the case. Why did the United States file charges against these defendants? I don't care about the procedure, that somebody's trying to appeal the case based on a procedural flaw, allegedly, but that's not what this case is about. Get to the heart of the case. Forget what procedural aspect the defendant was trying to use, one of the defendants, to get the case turned around. That's not what you're looking at. You're looking at the substantive law, which is why the United States was charging the defendants to begin with. So that's what I want you to focus on. Don't look at the procedural evidentiary issues. That's not what we're talking about. Sometimes you use a procedural issue as a means to an end, but that's not your focus, because what you're learning in this class is the substantive law. Because the substantive law, which is the law that has to do with the heart of the case, why somebody is suing someone else, that's the law you're concerned with, and that's the law that's going to help you be better business people and make better business decisions, because you're going to understand the legal ramifications if you don't. So when you look at the issue evaluation form, your issue is not an affirmative statement. It's not a thesis statement. It is actually a question. What was the overall question that the court had to decide in this particular case? And again, not the procedural evidentiary question. What was the overall substantive issue? What were we really looking at? What's really at the heart of this case? And then the facts. The facts are very important, and facts don't have to do with the procedural history. In other words, the plaintiff filed suit against the defendant, the United States charged the defendant, this is what happened. No, the facts are the circumstances that led the United States to file charges against the defendants. What were the circumstances that took place before the lawsuit was even contemplated or filed against the defendants, or the charges were actually contemplated or filed against the defendants? Those are the facts. That's the meat of the case. Don't be brief with them. Don't generalize them. Make sure you're as specific as possible with them so that you don't run afoul of, talking about the United States filed charges against the defendants, and then the defendants went to trial, and this is what happened. No, those aren't facts. The facts are what circumstances led to the United States even thinking that charges needed to be filed against the defendants. And when you're looking at the facts, you're going to be looking at the facts from the United States perspective, because the United States is the one that filed the charges. So from the United States perspective, what facts supported their charges against the defendants? Then identify facts against the issue, which is, well, what facts, if any, actually would support the defendant's position that they didn't do anything wrong, or Kozeny in this particular instance didn't do anything wrong. Identify the relevant laws. There are two very relevant laws that have to do with the substantive. Again, we're going back to the substance, not to the procedural, not evidentiary laws. We're talking about what were the substantive laws that had to do with this case. What were the laws that the United States used to charge the defendants in this case? The decision in holding, your holding should literally mirror the issue that you have stated. So if you state your issue correctly, your holding should mirror that. And that means that you're taking the word whether out of your issue if you're answering the issue in the affirmative, or you're adding a negative connotation, conjunction, if in fact you are stating in the negative. So you're going to mirror it. So in other words, if the issue were whether the defendant is guilty of negligence by running the stop sign and hitting, whether the plaintiff is whether the defendant is guilty of negligence by running the stop sign and hitting the plaintiff. And your answer is going to be, if it's in the affirmative, the defendant is guilty of negligence by running the stop sign and hitting the plaintiff. Do you see how it literally mirrors each other? If your answer were in the negative, then your holding would be the defendant is not guilty of negligence by running the stop sign and hitting the plaintiff. That would be the difference, because maybe what happened was that the plaintiff was actually walking on the wrong side of the crosswalk at dark, and the defendant didn't even see the plaintiff crossing the street, whatever the case may be. So you're going to have always extenuating circumstances. Rationale, that should be the longest part of your individual term project, which means that I would say that that part should be absolutely positively no less than 350 words. That's a lot of words, but there's a lot to say, because that's where you discuss how the court reached its decision and what it used. What does the law say? What are the elements of the laws that were applied in this case? And how do the facts fit into those elements of the law? So you want to talk about that. Number 6, based on your evaluation, what's your opinion? What do you think happened here? How could this situation have been avoided? What took place here? 7, that is your implementation plan. If you are the CEO or you are an executive and you're tasked with looking at the organizational changes that need to take place in order to ensure this doesn't happen again, I want you to be specific. What organizational changes do need to take place? How do you need to implement those organizational changes to ensure this type of stuff doesn't happen again? Because anytime that we are taking away from our business focus, networking, running our business, the organizational structure of it, doing sales and marketing, anytime we're pulled away from that, we're losing money. Because now, not only are we having to spend a lot of money on our attorneys and experts and this and that, but our time is money, and our time is valuable, especially if you are the rainmaker. So you want to think about those things. And that's it. Please make sure you do follow this format. Make sure you label your sections so that I know what section applies. Do not write this as though it's a research project, because it's not. It's a case analysis, so I want to make sure that you're focused on that. When we get to your deliverable 2, we'll talk next week about how you're going to go about looking at that. I will have the team project scenarios assigned to everybody this week, and then we're going to see about setting up a WebEx this week as well. Maybe the first part of next week, so that we can go over the scenarios and everybody's on the same page. All right, you guys have a great week 5. The material this week is intellectual property. Let's pop in there real quick before I end this week 5 Monday morning breakfast bite. Okay, so you got intellectual property, other property rights. Make sure you take a look at that, because intellectual property, hot topic, especially in our day and age when everyone is doing business over the internet. We have cyber piracy going on. We have a lot of issues with regard to trademark infringement and definitely patent infringement and copyright infringement that's happening not just on a national basis but on an international basis. So we have to be aware of those things as well. And you have chapters 8 through 9 and 49 to review. And you don't have a discussion this week because I want you to focus on your individual term project, and that's it. You guys, again, have a great week 5. If you have questions, don't hesitate to ask me. And don't forget, you get a free look. If you want a free review, get it to me by Friday afternoon. Ciao.